Many Jews today feel the need for a Jewish renaissance. People are searching for a more vital and authentic mode of Jewish expression, and more than ever we need to shift not only physically but spiritually out of exile mode. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom, Rav.
There are two common practices regarding lighting Hanukkah candles. Some people light immediately after sunset, whilst others light at Tzeit HaKochavim, the appearance of stars in the evening sky. Which of these positions is correct, or are both of them valid?
This is a very interesting topic, and in fact I published in Tafshin Memhet 1988, I published a pamphlet on this subject. Let me first give you the short answer, and that is as follows. Hazal state explicitly that Hanukkah candles are to be lit immediately after the sun sets, which here in Eretz Yisrael at this time of year means 20 to 5 in the afternoon. And of course in different parts of the world, even in different parts of Israel, the time may vary slightly. In other countries it may be very different. But wherever one is, one should light Hanukkah candles immediately after the sun sets. That is what Hazal state, and there is absolutely no reason to deviate from that explicit statement of the Chachamim. And now for some of the background and the relevant facts. Hazal discussed the lighting of Hanukkah candles in 4 places. One is in Masechet Shabbat in the Talmud Bavli, Daf Kaf Aleph. Another is in Masechet Soferim, Perek Kaf. A third is in the Psikat Rabbati, Perek Bet, and a fourth is in Megillat Ta'anith, Perek Teth. In all 4 sources, it states explicitly that one lights Hanukkah candles immediately upon the setting of the sun. In 3 of those 4 sources it says, the exact words are Misha Tishka Hama, that one lights immediately upon the setting of the sun. And in the 4th of those sources it says that one lights Mishgi'ata Hama, from the setting of the sun, which of course is exactly the same thing. The difference is purely linguistic and without any halachic ramification. On the other hand, if one looks at the Shulchan Aruch and some of the Posekim commenting on the Shulchan Aruch in Bar-Hayim Siman Tau Resh Ayin Beth, one discovers, first of all, that in the Shulchan Aruch it says that one lights Hanukkah candles Besof Shki'ata, at the end of the Shki'ah, the end of the sunset. And in some of the Mefarshim, such as the Magen Avraham, it says Hainu Tzeit HaKochavim. In other words, the meaning of this statement of the Shulchan Aruch is to say that one lights at the appearance of the stars in the evening sky. And this, of course, should bother a great many people. Why should it bother us? Because every normal person knows that we are talking about 2 distinct concepts and astronomical events. One is the sunset, in Hebrew Shki'at Hama, which refers, one would imagine, to the disappearance of the sun below the horizon, and the other refers to the appearance of the stars in the evening sky, which happens sometime later. How much later depends on the season and where one finds oneself on the earth. For example, at the equator or areas near the equator, twilight, the time between sunset and the appearance of the stars, is very brief indeed. So one could almost be forgiven perhaps for equating one with the other, even though they're not exactly simultaneous, but there is only a brief span of time between the disappearance of the sun below the horizon and the appearance of the stars. But in most parts of the world, northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere, there is a distinct period of time, and sometimes at higher and very high latitudes and very low latitudes, the time involved, particularly in the summer, is very long indeed. The time can be as anywhere from 15 or 20 minutes in some countries, and as much as 2 or 3 hours in other countries, not to mention, of course, those parts of the world where the sun doesn't set at all for some of the year. But we're not discussing those countries. The vast majority of countries on Earth, there are two distinct phenomena that one can observe: the setting of the sun and the appearance of the stars. So how precisely does it come about that certain poskim say that the Hanuka candle should be lit at the appearance of the stars? And the other question that we need to clarify is, why does the Shulchan Aruch speak about Sof Shki'ah, the end of the Shki'ah, the end of sunset? Because after all, when understood in simple, plain terms, the sunset is an event that takes place literally in the blink of an eye. In other words, as long as one can see the sun, one cannot say that the sun has set. And by the way, what I'm saying now is a direct quote from a teshuvah written by Rabbi Avraham, the son of the Rambam, quoted by Maharam al-Ashkar in his famous teshuvah on the subject pertaining to the question of day and night and twilight according to halacha, in his collection of responsa, Siman Tzadivav. He quotes the son of the Rambam as saying that as long as one can see any part of the sun, even just the top tip, the upper rim of the sun, visible above the horizon, the sun is not yet said to have set. As soon as the sun totally disappears, is completely invisible because it has gone below that horizon, then we say the sun has set. That is the moment of sunset or shki'ah. So how can one have a beginning of a shki'ah and an end of a shki'ah, tahilat shki'ah and sof shki'ah? How does this work? This is a one-time and very time-sensitive event which happens literally in the blink of an eye. So we have many questions which we need to answer. So let us begin by clarifying and stating that there is one shita, one approach, that of the Geonim, the heads of the Torah academies in Babylon, and the Rif and the Rambam, the Gra, the Gaon of Vilna, the Baal HaTanya, and many other poskim, according to whom, as we just indicated, sunset, Shki'at Hama, is precisely that event as we described, that the sun disappears below the horizon, and this event takes place in the twinkling of an eye, and that is the end of the day, or the Yom Wadai, that which is considered to be definitely day according to the Torah. And nighttime is the appearance of 3 stars in the evening sky, and the time intervening between those 2 points is called Ben HaShemashoth, which is halachically considered neither definitely day nor definitely night. That's called Ben HaShemashoth. And that time period again can vary depending on the season and depending on the country in which one finds oneself. Here in Eretz Yisrael, for example, at this time of year, the time of Hanuka, for example, when the days are short and the sun sets at 20 to 5, the twilight, the Ben HaShemashoth period, is also brief, and therefore even less than 20 minutes, certainly no longer than 20 minutes after the sun sets in Israel in the winter, one can observe 3 stars in the sky, and that is already considered nighttime. In the middle of the summer, for example, that time can be closer to 30 minutes. And in other countries, of course, it can be much, much more. That is one shita. There is another shita, another position, which holds that, and this is perhaps surprising to many people, this is not known to your average balabait perhaps, and that is that according to Rabbeinu Tam and a number of Rishonim, what we see, the visible sunset, the visible shki'ah, is not to be considered sunset. In fact, that is only considered to be the beginning of a process which extends over a period of an hour or more, as I will now explain. When the sun sets, according to Rabbeinu Tam and many Rishonim, we do not consider the day to have ended. It is still considered day for almost 1 hour, 58 minutes, over 58 minutes approximately. It is still considered to be day. And at that time, we understand, or we refer to that point in time as Sof HaShki'ah, or the second Shki'ah, the Shki'ah Shniyah. But even that is not considered nighttime according to this Shita, the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam. Only about 14 or so minutes later is it considered to be Tzedek Kohavim, the appearance of the stars, and nightfall. Now, if one looks at the night sky, one will find it very difficult to understand and to rationalize this position. And in fact, it is difficult and surprising, and flies in the face of that which is readily observed in the sky, and it flies in the face of common sense. So where in fact did this position come from? It is based on a Gemara in Masechet Pesachim, where it states that from the time of the Shki'ah to the time of Tzedek Kochavim, one can walk, an average person can walk the distance of 4 mil, Arba'a milin, or according to another version, Hamisha milin, 5 million. And this is a length of time which translates into approximately an hour and a quarter, a little bit less, a little bit more, depending on how one calculates it, or if one goes with the 5 mil shita, then it becomes an hour and a half perhaps. At any rate, we're talking about a lengthy period of time, not a short, brief span of time. The question is how to understand that Gemara over there. According to Rabbeinu Tam, the meaning of Tzedek Kochavim in that Gemara is exactly the meaning of Tzedek Kochavim in every other place in the Gemara, in the Halacha, and that is that the beginning, we're talking about the beginning of the night. Whereas, according to another explanation, Tzedek Kochavim being referred to in that particular sugya, that particular discussion in Masechet Pesachim, is not talking about the halachic time or the halachic phenomenon known as Tzedek Kochavim, but rather it's referring to what we would call the complete absence of light from the evening sky. Because after all, when the sun sets in the west, there is still much light visible in the sky. The light begins to recede from the east towards the west, and this process can be quite lengthy, again depending on the season, depending on the country. But even in Israel, on an average day of the year, we're talking about a process which takes nearly an hour and a quarter, until the time that all the light from the setting sun has receded from the sky, so that even the western horizon is entirely dark. That, according to Rabbeinu Tam, is called Tzedek Kochavim, and that is the beginning. Only then do we say the night has begun. But according to the other interpretation, that is simply referring there to an historical, that is to say, an astronomical phenomenon, but not to one with any halachic ramification. And therefore it's not to be understood as the Tzedek Kochavim normally referred to. However, the point is that according to this Shita of Rabbeinu Tam, wherever the Gemara speaks of Shki'at Hama, it is understood to be Tzedek Kochavim. This is how one has to understand the expression Shki'at Hama, and this is for the simple reason that if we understand that the sunset is not a one-time event, frozen in one brief moment, but rather a process which takes place over a period of time, during which time the light recedes from east to west until all that light has disappeared from the sky, that is an extended period of time, that is a process, and there you can speak about the beginning of the Shki'ah and the end of the Shki'ah, and the final ending of that process is called Tzedek Kochavim. And therefore, according to Rabbeinu Tam, and this is not known to many people, according to Rabbeinu Tam and many other Rishonim, the correct time for lighting Hanuka candles is at Tzedek Kochavim according to Rabbeinu Tam, which means that you light Hanuka candles approximately an hour and a quarter, or perhaps in the winter it's more like an hour, after sunset. And according to another interpretation of this same Shita of Rabbeinu Tam, whenever it says Shki'at Hama, it refers to the second Shki'ah, that is to say, a period a little bit before that final ending or disappearance of all the light, and therefore a period of close to an hour after the setting of the sun, the actual setting of the sun. So we have, according to Rabbeinu Tam's explanation, or that approach, we have two approaches which are based on this thinking and this understanding. And according to this, each Shita would explain the time for lighting candles, which is defined in the Gemara as Shkiata Hama, as being according to its own understanding of these terms. So according to the first Shita, it would be at the actual setting of the sun. According to the second, it would be almost an hour later. And according to the third, it would be over an hour after the actual setting of the sun. The interesting point to note is that what we see today is that some people light immediately after the actual setting of the sun, the visible setting of the sun, and some light approximately 20 or 30 or 40 minutes after the setting of the sun. And they claim that they're lighting at Tzedek Kochavim, which might be correct in terms of the visible reality that there are stars in the sky by that time, without a doubt. However, it's also equally true that there is no halachic shita, there is no authority that claims that Hanukkah candles should be lit 20, 30 or 40 minutes after sunset. According to all halachic opinions, one either is, if one takes all opinions into account, one is either to light immediately after the visible sunset, or approximately 1 hour or 1 hour and a quarter after that sunset. But 20, 30 or 40 minutes after sunset is not a time for lighting candles according to anybody at all. In other words, what many people are doing is lighting according to the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam, who spoke of his understanding of what Tzedek Kochavim refers to, and then applying it to their understanding of what Tzedek Kochavim refers to. Because most people, most Jews in the world, when it comes to Shabbat, for example, not just Hanukkah, consider Shabbat to be out when 3 stars are visible in the sky, which is not true according to Rabbeinu Tam at all. So we have a mistaken transposing of Rabbeinu Tam Shita onto a different reality in a different position, which does not halachically hold water. And therefore, there is only one correct position based on the fact that the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam can be shown to be incorrect for many reasons which you won't go into now, but suffice it to say that both the Gra and the Baal HaTanya in the same generation, as we know, disagree with each other on many things, but on this they agreed and brought many proofs which clearly demonstrate this fact, that this Shita is incorrect. And when Chazal referred to the beginning of the night, they are referring to Tzedek Kochavim, they're referring to 3 stars being visible in the evening sky, which is between 20 and 30 minutes after the sun sets in Eretz Yisrael, depending on the time of year. And one cannot take a term from one Shita and apply it with the terms of reference and concepts that belong to another Shita. This is not halachically reasonable or sensible. And this is pointed out, by the way, by a number of poskim. The Gra points this out, and the Bah and the Aruch HaShulchan all point out this fact, that the question of when one lights Hanukkah candles depends entirely on one's understanding of the concepts of Ben Hashemashoth and Shkia and Tzedek Kochavim as they apply every day of the year. The other point I would mention in summary is to say that there is an issue here of intellectual honesty and rigor. Every person should understand plainly that Shkiat HaHama and Tzedek Kochavim, the sunset on the one hand and the appearance of stars on the other hand, are 2 distinct phenomena, and the difference between it cannot be papered over so simply. And if one sees such a papering over, one has to ask the question, why is this? How could this possibly be? And unfortunately, many people, and I'm not referring to the average Jew who is not perhaps familiar with all these issues, but even Torah students and rabbis, they don't always ask these questions. They seem, because of a willingness to accept almost any interpretation to almost any concept, and this is not the way of the Torah. Lozo darka shel Torah. Torah has to be learnt in a forthright and intellectually honest and rigorous manner, and things must add up and make sense. And if something does not make sense, then one has to wonder why, and one has to ask the question. And if one discovers that the matter is not as one thought, but rather it is different, and one should do and act differently, then that is what one should do.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, If you would like to obtain Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.